Hey, by the way, tonight's game, New York wins that outright.
You know he's on top. Million subs, he never gonna flop. Out of Chicago, where the streets don't sleep. Betting on games, making cash real deep. Crystal ball for sports, he knows the lines. He's a sports aficionado, the money he finds. From football to basketball, he's always on point. Predicting winners never disappoints. He's got that hustle, that Chicago vibe. Making moves on the streets, cash on the side. With E, you know it's always a bet. He's the king of the game, never forget.
Hello and welcome to the Etoft21sports show for December 17th. How is everyone doing? My name is Eric. I'm the man behind Etoft21sports. Absolutely loaded episode for you today. My boy Gino from the That's What G Said podcast is this week's special guest. Him and I are going to look back at week 15, share some week 16 bets. Before we get into all that, I'd like to say thank you to the sponsor of the show, Boom Fantasy. If you're not using Boom Fantasy, go to the App Store, download the Boom Fantasy app, use promo code ETOFT21. That way they know old Uncle Rico sent you. Now, Gino also sent in a horse racing bet of the day. Let's see what he's got cooking for us over at Gulfstream Park.
It's a big Saturday of racing coming up at Gulfstream Park on December the 21st. Races are already out. They have a couple graded stakes races. We're going to look at the DRF past performances. Make sure to head to Daily Racing Form, drf.com for anything you need. I'm going to go to Steel Sunshine in here. It's a horse who really likes it at Gulfstream Park. 6 of his 7 lifetime wins have been here. He was 4th in this race last year. He won the Gulfstream Park Mile, but he had a little bit of trouble in this race last year. He had a little bit of trouble in the Hooper. This is where he wants to be, going just about a mile at Gulfstream. I think the race sets up pretty well for him. Steel Sunshine. It's going to be the play for us this week. Gulfstream Park, race number 9. Remember, with these past performances, you can get a look at all different formats. Steel Sunshine, the number 6 in here, will be the play for us as we dive into if you're someone who likes to look at graphs and projectors, see where horses could be early on in the race, these are perfect for you. So best of luck, everyone, playing the races this weekend.
Make sure to give my boy Gino a follow. He's posting videos on YouTube all the time, breaking down the big races of the day. Now, actually, speaking of Gino, let's welcome him to the show. Gino, how you doing today, my man?
Well, I can't hide if my horse racing play doesn't do any well this weekend. So now I'm here. So now ready to rock and roll. And I can't believe we only have 3 weeks left in the NFL season, man. I'm very lucky because you join me each week on my show to help me preview all the games. And then we have NFL Betting Blitz. So you and I have gotten to talk a lot throughout the year, but very crazy that we just have a few weeks left now.
And right off the bat, we got a question. Thoughts on Penix starting?
Yeah. When they made the draft pick, we really questioned it because it didn't make a whole lot of sense for your resources. You just went out and spent a lot of money on a quarterback that you thought was going to be your starting quarterback. He's been all along. And then you use a high draft pick on a player that has been a backup all year long. I mean, looking at Atlanta, don't you think defensively they could have used a little bit of help up front? I know you were kind of singing the tune of them getting a defensive lineman, something like that. They didn't grab that. Now the discussion is just Penix moving forward. You put a lot of pressure on this kid in a spot where now their playoff hopes are on his shoulders. He's never started, period. So I don't know if it's going to be automatic, and I'm not convinced that the rest of their team is well built enough to just kind of slide him in. If they could have used some other resources, Penix might have been there later. They could have traded maybe a deeper pick. Who knows? I've not been a fan of this from the beginning, and I was a little down on the Falcons this season, Eric, and I think you kind of were too, just from the way they were priced, because they were really priced like one of the favorites in the NFC, and I don't like what I've seen even for them coming off a win. So, yeah, is he going to be better than Cousins? I mean, he'll be able to move around a little bit more, but I'm not positive that it's just going to be put him right in. Example, like, would you feel comfortable if Caleb Williams was in the same spot? I don't know. We've seen Caleb probably a better prospect than Penix. Maybe Penix is a little more ready now because he's older, but I'm still concerned, Eric. I think this team could have been better off using that draft pick somewhere else. And I think that they, we saw some teams take swings on guys like Sam Darnold. Could he have been right now? Would you rather have Sam Darnold or Kirk Cousins?
Yeah,
it's probably a pretty easy question. right?
Yeah,
What
for
do you
sure.
think? What do you think about Penix? Penix?
I mean, the main thing that he's obviously going to have a bigger arm. What the Falcons had to do in the game started with the Chiefs is they moved London from the outside to the inside just because Cousins had literally no strength to get the ball to the outside. But I think the main thing is all the pass pro stuff has to flip flop now because he's left-handed, and I think that's an underrated.
Yes.
A lot of people
You point this out a
realize.
lot. The linemen, the receivers, the way they run their routes, the way they turn and look, the linemen and the angles they have to use when they're blocking. It's way different.
It's completely different. We've seen this line drop from 10 to 8 right now, but it's with the Giants, and I want to get there with the Giants. I had them last week. I had them plus a 17. They got down to the 2, couldn't get in. I mean, I just can't take the Giants again just because it's.
So we're talking
Joe Judge, was that the coach? Joe Judge type vibes.
Yeah.
When they always had these great numbers, great values, and we just couldn't take them just because I think the team has just kind of quit. And I think they've kind of quit on the Bull, and he'll probably get an OC job pretty quickly because he is a good OC, but he's just not head coach material. I'm a little worried.
The one thing I liked about what I saw last week, at least Boyle, more of a like a professional quarterback, he did the one thing that they should do: get the ball to Neighbors.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. DeVito couldn't even do that, unfortunately.
DeVito's awful. He's a gimmick to sell tickets.
So bad.
We'll see who the starter is. I mean, I may get involved. I've bet a lot of games this weekend, and I'm not going to lie. Like I was talking to my buddy David about it, who's on my podcast. It's just been one of those years of the public, man. Like you just kind of sit back. My friend, she posted the ticket who wants my son to make them bets. Her son picked out like a random 19-1 winner, just all little chalky stuff. And
and they all
what it is. It all kind of evens out, but this has been my worst year, full transparency, in the NFL betting in a while. So hopefully we can get it bounced back going into this week. Falcons defense is really bad. Falcons defense is awful. They made the trade for Dijon. He hasn't been able to get any pass rush. Defensively in the back four, they are awful.
It's funny because last year it was kind of the opposite. Like with Arthur Smith there, he kept underachieving with their offense and what they were doing. And it was their defense and guys like Bates that were making huge plays and keeping them in a lot of games last year. And we sort of expected their defense to take maybe like another step forward, but they're at the bottom of the league in pressure on the quarterback. They just don't put any pressure there. So what does that mean? They don't create a whole lot of turnovers, and they don't give themselves easy field position. So they're just behind the 8 ball. Then you have a quarterback who can't really move. So now you have to go longer fields with a guy that's a little bit predictable. We know he's not going to be getting out of the pocket at all. So it makes him so much easier to defend. This team hasn't really progressed the way they should have after a pretty good start earlier in the year when they got lucky in a couple games that they probably shouldn't have won.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, my plus 300 for them not to make the playoffs was an absolute absurd price. Is looking great.
It is.
So hopefully it can get there. Bobby chimes in, him and I were talking about television shows. Have you watched Cross?
No. Cross. Tell me about it.
Alexander Cross, James Patterson wrote all these books about this detective. It's on Prime. Pretty solid. It takes a lot for me to get engaged into a TV show.
I was going to say, if you are talking about it, it's probably pretty good. It takes a lot
for me to get engaged in a TV show. So definitely for those watching, check out Cross. But we're not here to talk about TV. We're here to talk some NFL. We each have a takeaway from week 15. Sounds crazy to think that we're this far. Gino, what is your takeaway from week 15, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the lay of the land, I feel like right now the Eagles are the team to beat. And things change a lot week to week, but coming out of week 15, when you look around at the top teams, you've got the Lions who are really banged up. Man, I feel bad because they just keep losing key player after key player after key player. You look at the Chiefs. We don't know exactly what's going on with Mahomes and his health. So when your starting quarterback has a high ankle sprain right now, to me, looking at the way the Chiefs have played all year and kind of they continue to win, but they haven't been all that impressive. So now we have a quarterback concern with them and just some overall concerns about like how good they are offensively. We look at the Bills, who have been really impressive, scoring 40 plus points the last couple of weeks, but they've also allowed 40 points. in the last couple of weeks in a game where they may need to get a stop if the game's back and forth or if they're down early. Could they stop an Eagles offense? Right now, this team has been really impressive, Eric. They went on a 20-play, 10-plus minute drive to ice a game last week. It was incredible. They just kept picking up exactly what they needed, and they did not give the ball back to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh only got 2 second-half possessions last week.
Absurd.
That's insane.
Absolutely absurd.
So I'm thinking about the Fangio defense, who they've made some adjustments. So far, they have a 10-game winning streak right now. They are holding their opponents to under 14 points per game in that 10-game stretch. They've held 3 different teams to under 175 total yards. They held Pittsburgh to 163 total yards. That was the fewest for Pittsburgh in 14 years. So when you think about their defense, which is one of the best in the league right now, they can put pressure on the quarterback. Then on the offensive side, trenches, I like their offensive line. Quarterback, solid quarterback who came off of one of his better games of the year. And what's nice about Hurts, he can pick up a first down with his legs if need be. You've got 2 receivers that you can get 100 yards with. We saw them both, Brown and Smith, last week. And one of the MVP candidates in the league is Barkley, who's made big plays for them all year. When you talk about right now, the health of teams, the way teams are balanced, I think the Eagles right now are the team to beat.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway is we have one comment. Where is that one? Carter and Sirianni in a fight. Who you taking?
Yeah. Anyone in Sirianni in a fight, I'm going the opposite side. Like, Sirianni feels like one of those guys who's bobbing and weaving, but like, quit holding me back. Like, he's behind people. Don't hold me back. Don't hold me back.
I like the Eagles a lot. I have a future on them. They went back to their roots in the second half with that running game. That was really impressive. You got A.J. Brown. You got Devontae Smith. The defense is kicking it all cylinders. My worry with them is I just kind of feel that Sirianni's a ticking time bomb. You know what I mean?
That's the key. Like, if it's a tight game and it comes to decision-making and that sort of thing, do you trust him right now? That is my complete concern as well. On the field, well-balanced, least amount of concerns on the field, I'll take them. But you're absolutely right. It's amazing that they were 2-2, and we were talking about him on the hot seat.
Yeah.
And since then, they've won 10 games in a row.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Talent-wise, they're there. It's just can he
do it? Yeah.
Execute. My takeaway, windows close fast. Lions window. I love my Lions. It's done. I know people are saying I'm probably overreacting. Need to take a step back. We need to understand all these injuries and everything they have to overcome. They lost Montgomery, and the reason why this one is huge is Gibbs has had fumbling issues. He had that fumble in the Bears game and Thanksgiving, which kind of flipped the game a little bit. He had that fumble in the NFC Championship game last year. For the Lions to make a run here with the injuries on their defense, they needed to just do what the Eagles did, lean on that run game. Gibbs isn't built to carry the ball 20 times. Now you're bringing in Reynolds, who doesn't have the burst as Montgomery, and you have the guy Vikai, who played DB and running back for Utah last year.
Yeah.
We don't even know what he's going to be able to do. And when we look at how Campbell has been coaching, he knows they don't have Hutchinson, their best pass
He's
rusher.
making decisions like he doesn't trust the defense, right?
Their best space eater, their best run stopper up front. Their 2 best run stoppers at the linebacker position. Dorsey and Davis are hurt. That means Vendor, he was the DB on that deep ball to Ayuk, who hit him in the head and couldn't get the INT in the NFC Championship game. They drafted Ratstroff from Missouri. He is out. They are ripe to lose this top seed and to be taken over by the Vikings. I'm a little worried. And when we look at what Campbell's doing, going for it on 4th down against the Packers, because he knew even though there was 40 seconds, this team probably wouldn't be able to.
They weren't going to stop. Yep. And even last week, the way he kicked that onside kick.
With 10 minutes left. He knows
they're not stopping him.
He knows that he needs to gamble. He needs to take chances. It's going to be interesting to see how their pace of play is going to be. Now, granted, They have a get right spot this weekend against the Bears, one of the worst teams in the league stopping the run. They're going to be able to lean on the run a lot. So maybe like they can get a little momentum going. But when we look at their schedule, they have the Bears this weekend, and then they close out with Minnesota at home. And I'm totally spacing who they have in week 17. They have the 49ers out west.
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean, they could easily go 1-2 there, and then they would drop, and that would kind of be a little deflating thing.
And maybe you got to go on the road and play somewhere kind of colder, right? Which you haven't had to do most of the year. And then that brings like the golf stuff into it too. So yeah, it's just unfortunate because the healthy Lions, the team earlier on in the year, yeah, that roster and that staff and the way they had their confidence and everything, they're as good as anyone. But when you talk about windows, we just saw the same sort of thing happen with the 49ers, right? Over the last couple of years, they kept getting there, and you just sort of feel like, oh, well, we just missed. It was a good year. We'll get back there again next year. Doesn't always work that way.
Who knows?
Contracts change. Yeah. Guys get hurt. Contracts change. Look at this year's 49ers. They didn't have any of the same key players from last year. And then guys, once you start losing some of those games, the locker room doesn't buy in as much, right? You have guys that aren't going like 110%. They're going like 95%, not hitting every tackle, you can see it. And that sort of happened with the 49ers, and you feel bad for the Lions because maybe next year, maybe they will be healthier, or maybe there will be some sort of a strange road where one team gets upset. The Lions don't have to play necessarily the best teams along the way. They get a little lucky. Things can happen. Yeah. But your point in this was the best opportunity this year for the Lions. The way this team had played most of the year, they just looked better than everybody else. They looked balanced on both sides, offense and defense. They could run the ball. They could hit you in every way needed. And they seemed like they liked the coach. There was just a good energy, a good vibe for this Lions team all year long, like a team that's been building well the last few years. And now, yeah, if you don't make a Super Bowl this year, you wonder next year, things change, guys leave, you got to pay other people a little more money. Maybe Ben Johnson goes somewhere else, and maybe your coaching staff looks different. Maybe your defensive coordinator gets a job somewhere else. This is what happens, right? And yeah, it's a bummer because 4 weeks ago, this team was the team to beat, no doubt about it.
And then Hutchinson goes down. McNeil got.
That was the first one because Hutch was the one where it was like, man, he's the game changer. He's the guy in a big playoff game or a big Super Bowl that he's going to be. He could be unblockable, right? Or one of those guys that flips everything for you. And now there have been games where you had 13, 14 defensive players on IR.
It's just
unbelievable.
It's just too much. It is what it is. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like Johnson could be gone. I know he's definitely going to pick he's been quite adamant. He's not going to waste time. He's not going to interview just to interview. He's going to only go to places he wants to go. So it's going to be interesting to see if he elects to interview or if he waits one more year. Aaron Glenn, I don't like the defense he runs. He runs a lot of single high stuff. When you play like the elite quarterbacks, you cannot get away.
They'll pick you apart
and run. Kind of like Josh Allen did last week. All right, so now let's shift our attention over to some betting. But before we jump into all that, we need to take a look back how we did last week. Disappointing 2-4 last week. Kyle hit the Cowboys money line plus 125, lost the Lions minus 2.5, and the 49ers Rams over 49.5. Old Uncle Rico hit the Texans minus 3, lost the Steelers plus 5.5, and the 49ers minus 2.5. For the show, we are 48, 32, and 1. So still at 59%, back-to-back losing weeks. Hopefully we can turn it around here. So let's jump right into it. It's kind of funny. All these bets but one I have that you put in. So I'm interested to hear because this is the one I have. So tell us what your first bet is.
Oh, sorry. I think can you hear me, Eric?
I can hear you. I can hear you. You're good.
Had a little connection issue for a second.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh. Okay, there we go. Now we're back. Yep. So You had a couple. I had a couple that were on the same with you
Yeah.
last week as well. One of the teams that kind of quietly, Eric, has been playing pretty well under the radar right now, the Dallas Cowboys. You know, you look at what they've done in the last 4 weeks. They've won 3 of their 4 games. It started with a win at Washington. Then they beat the Giants on Thanksgiving. Then they had the game against the Bengals where they had the ball with a chance to go win the game, and they completely shot themselves in the foot late in that game. They very easily could have won 4 consecutive games. And I think one of the real things we're seeing with Dallas, like what I look for, and I know you do too, when a team is winning, have they done something to change, right? Did they make an adjustment, and is that resulting? Well, actually, yes. They're running the ball way better. Rico Dowdle, he had 149 yards rushing. So the last 4 games, this 4-game stretch I was just talking about, this is Rico Dowdle. 19 carries, 86 yards, 22 carries, 112 yards, 18 carries, 131 yards, 25 carries, 149 yards. He's the first undrafted player with 3 straight 100-plus rushing yard games since Arian Foster back in 2014. And so now you look at this team, they're running the ball well. When they need to make a play, they still can go get Lamb, and they got Micah Parsons back last week. So they were able to put a lot more pressure on the quarterback. I just think they're playing well. They're kind of under the radar because they've been so bad early in the year. A lot of people sort of wrote them off. And now they're going to be at home playing against a Tampa team that just beat up the Chargers. And Tampa might be a little bit overvalued coming off of that game. Eric, I know you have a lot of numbers and trends and stats all the time that talk about how when teams come off of games where they score like 35 or 40 or 45 points, generally the next week you get that regression from their offense. So I think a couple different combinations. Can Dallas just run the ball, slow this game down a little bit, lean on Dowdle? They get some better defensive pieces back. And I like Dallas at home plus the 4 in here. They haven't been really good at home all throughout the year. I'm going to just kind of treat that as an outlier more than any real thing to kind of point to why they haven't been as good at home. But I think it's a really nice spot for Dallas.
The one thing that Dallas has been able to do is they're just getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb. They're just like, here, go. CeeDee, do your thing. And it's basically times 10 now. So they're doing everything they did with Dak, but now
they've like simplified it even more, right? Because you don't let Rush make all the reads, make everything. You kind of script it out a lot better for him. And honestly, sometimes when you make things simpler for your team, look, they just hand the ball off. They run with Dowdle. When they need a play, they go to Lamb. Very simple. Sometimes they're not going to beat the best teams, and they're not going to make a Super Bowl run. But if they're not making mistakes, they're putting some pressure on the quarterback, and they're just handing the ball off, picking up some first downs here and there. Cooper Rush had one of his better games. I like the way they've been playing, so I'm going to lean on them this week. Lamb generated on 1 touchdown drive. Lamb had a 20-yard pass, a 28-yard pass, and a 14-yard touchdown. 62 of the 87 yards on 1 possession.
Yeah, it's just insane. And in one of my leagues, I was going up against him in the fantasy football playoffs, which was lovely. And also,
hey, what's for you?
They have CMU's finest Cooper Rush at the QB position.
Yeah.
My old man has shared an adult beverage with Cooper Rush. He's a good guy.
Nice. Awesome.
Good old man. My bet, and I'm going to Thursday night, I am taking the Chargers -3. The Broncos voodoo needs to be studied. Back-to-back games, they had 0 business winning, let alone covering as big favorites. Last week, 191 total yards, 3.2 yards per play, and they won by double digits. Colts, 117 more yards, 1.1 more yards per play, 5 more first downs. Literally 0 business winning, let alone covering that game. Now let's look at the last 2 games they've played. Outgained by 269 yards, 14 fewer first downs, 245 less passing yards. They should have won both games. They're just winning on this random turnover luck. Jonathan Taylor dropping a ball while going into the end zone on a podcast I listen to now and then, the Chris Long podcast. That's one of them that I really go out of my way to listen to. He mentioned about having to play 70 plays or more and then having a quick turnaround. Broncos were on the field for 72 plays. I think they're going to be a little up going against this physical Chargers team on a short week.
That was one of the weirder box scores you'll ever see in a game. That Charger Broncos, because if you just take the quick look and you don't realize how big the three plays in that game that flipped everything. The Taylor tossing the ball before getting in the end zone that would have put him up 20-7 right there. Then have you ever seen a double pass intercepted like that?
No, that was just weird. That was just
it was so weird. I can't recall ever seeing that happen. I feel like it's got to have happened at some point, but the play is just happening in slow motion because, unfortunately, Richardson can't complete short stuff. So they feel forced to do some crazy, weird trick play. How about the other play where the Broncos kicked the field goal, but the Colts were offsides, and it gave them a touchdown? Instead, they got an automatic first down. So there were three plays that completely flipped the game. It could have easily been a Colts win by margin.
And I mean, with how the game was going, Nix was playing awful. It would have been in a negative green script. He probably would have had a couple more TDs. They would have steamrolled that if that whole Taylor fumble didn't happen. Favorites are 56% ATS last 20 years on Thursday Night Football. When it is a divisional game, divisional favorites, 55%. Nix looks to me like he's hitting the rookie wall. Hasn't looked as good the last couple of games. The way to attack the Chargers defense is with a physical running game. The running game this year for the Broncos is just non-existent. Javonte Williams completely isn't what he thought we were going to be. Those leg injuries have just ate away his career. Estimane isn't the guy either. They really struggle at the running back position. The main weapon for the Broncos is Cortland Sutton. When you look at his career against Darwin James, he has struggled. Last game, he only had 4 for 53. One of the big surprises this year has been the Broncos offensive line. We weren't that high on it. Has it been they just improved a lot, or they've been overachieving, and now you're playing against Mack and Bosa? I think it is the latter. You can run on this wide 9 system of the Broncos. I think we're going to see a little bit more run game from the Chargers, especially with how much they limited Vidal and Edwards last Sunday against the Bucs. I think they're going to lean on a little bit more. I like the matchup in the trenches. I like the trends. I'm going to take the Chargers here, -3. Thoughts on the JT fumble? That's what Sports Facts just chimed in on. I mean, I think it cost him the game. I don't think if he fumbles,
it's 20-7 if they go in and they don't score another point following that.
And with how Nix was, like I said, with how Nix was playing, I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball. It's going to be a negative game script. It's going to pass the ball a little bit more. Didn't have a good game passing. Had, I think, like 150 yards passing.
And the way it was crazy is like, because of the playoff seeding and how important that game was for the Colts, because they're chasing the Broncos and the Chargers, both of these teams. I mean, that play not only cost them that game, that individual play could be so huge. Like, that could be the reason why they don't make the playoffs, because the Broncos have this game and a tough way to end the season. Yeah, like the Broncos could lose 3 games in a row to end.
And they
absolutely
and
still make it.
The thing, I don't know if you saw any of the post-game interviews, but a couple things really stood out to me in the post-game interviews. Number one, Adam Troutman, the tight end, someone asked him, what would Sean Payton do if one of you guys did that? And he replied, we would fly back commercial.
Yeah.
And that just kind of tells me, okay, those guys know we're not getting around with Sean Payton. And I don't think Cheyenne has that respect in the locker room from the Colts. Number 2, one of the guys on the Broncos, one of their defensive guys, was given his interview. He just stopped. He goes, shout out Jonathan Taylor. That would piss me off more than a player. And it's going to show me a lot about Taylor, what happens this week, how does he respond going in it. And the third thing is, I hated his interview. His post-game interview, how he looked facial-wise, he looked like he had just cried. So that, to me, that looked awful. I hate how he's like, this couldn't be done in a 50-point game if we're winning or losing in a playoff game, blah, 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 blah. I would have had more respect for the guy if he just would have looked and he just would have said, hey, guys, you know what?
I made a mistake.
Yep. I effed up. This is on me.
I take responsibility.
It was just, I just didn't like the whole thing. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, you mentioned it. I don't know what is going to be next for the Colts. Like, what is going to look? Are they going to move off of Richardson? Are they going to fire Shiken? Are they going to get
Because man, Richardson, the thing is like this is who they drafted, right? They knew he was going to be a project. They knew he was a guy who didn't have a whole lot of experience, who didn't have a whole lot of starts under him. And like when I watch him, he's so Jameis-y to me. And I'm not saying the style of play, but just like good play, bad play, good play, bad play. And like if you can't just make the 5-yard throws, I don't know how you can expect to be this really serious team. You know, that's like that was a big game for them last week. That was a big game for them.
Quarterback market is nothing next year.
This year, there's not a bunch of this year. There was a lot of good rookies that we thought were going to be good, and that seemed like they could be franchise quarterbacks or starting quarterbacks in the league for a while. Even this year coming out, we just talked about Nix. He was a guy that we didn't really have. He's been better than I had expected. At least been a guy who can get the job done. We can't say that about Richardson right now.
And next year, I mean, reality of the situation is, do the Jets, when you look at the first domino I feel that needs to fall on the quarterback spectrum is Aaron Rodgers. When you look at
Rodgers and Darnold.
Yeah. When you look at what Rodgers' contract, it makes the most sense. You get out of it now if you're the Jets.
Yep.
But then where does he go? I think at first I thought he was going to go to Minnesota, but the fact that Minnesota signed Daniel Jones, you know what I mean? I don't think he goes there. I think he's going to go to Tennessee. Does that mean Darnold will go to Indianapolis? Like, there's a lot of little moving pieces because this quarterback class, Shadir Sanders, I mean, look, maybe he will be good.
Cam Ward.
I don't think Cam Ward has turnover issues. There's no one really else in this quarterback class. So it's going to be an interesting offseason in terms of quarterbacks. Speaking of quarterbacks, Bryce Young's been looking better. You like the Panthers here. Tell us why you like the Panthers.
Yeah, it was a down week for them last week. They had some really good, I think 3 or 4 positive weeks in a row for their team overall. He was just bad, honestly. He missed some throws. They turned it over 4 times, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles. They got punched out on the opening drive. He had an interception. He just made the wrong read, forced the ball to Thielen, who was really well covered. And then in the second half, the offensive line was just really bad. They were 3 of 11 on third down. Not a whole lot of positive to say about Carolina, just coming off of last week's game, watching the film there. I think there was a little something to the fact that Carolina was favored for the first time in a couple years. It almost seemed like Dallas took that personally. Like that was like bulletin board material for the Cowboys, feeling like we're the team that's not going to be favored against, this lowly Panthers team. And so I feel like after a couple of weeks of good play, maybe the Panthers even start kind of feeling better about themselves to where, oh yeah, we're favored in this game. They like the value of them, kind of the perspective of them changed. People talking about Bryce Young now as more of a quarterback, and this team is an actual team. They should have won a couple of these games. I think it may have gotten to their head a little bit. I know that's kind of narrative-y versus like on-field stuff, but I felt like that was kind of the spot against Carolina last week. And as we said, Dallas has kind of quietly been playing a little bit better. I think this is a really nice bounce back spot for Carolina this week. Now you've got an Arizona team who won last week, but I still haven't been impressed with the way they've looked the last 5 or 6 weeks. I could see this being a close game. Give me the Panthers at home. Anything over a field goal, I'm fine with.
They don't cover. Murray doesn't cover as a favorite.
Yeah.
That's just the thing. I mean, and when you look at it, how does that game play out if Dortch's fumble wasn't picked up by Jonah Williams?
Right? If it's a touchback.
3-0. I believe it was 3-0 at that time. And Dortch fumbles. Williams jumps on the ball. How does that play out? That's the big question.
And you watch that game, I don't even know how much the Patriots are trying to win. Obviously they are, but like the offense and the schemes that they're running early in the game, like they're not letting Drake May succeed at all. Like he's not being put in a position to succeed whatsoever. And he's playing really well. Like if you were just to stack individually the young quarterbacks, I'd have no problem with anyone that said they've been the most impressed with Drake, with May, who's had the least to work with, and probably one of the worst coaching staffs of all of them.
Mayo's gone. They're so just gonna
Gotta be.
they're gonna hire Vrabel. They're just gonna be
I
like,
think so.
we
I think so
totally
too.
have this up. It should be Vrabel. My next one, and I am going to Cincy. Give me the Browns here, plus the 7. How do we trust the Bengals laying this big of a number? DVOA overall defensively 29th, passing defense 28th, rushing defense 27th. Now let's look at PFF 22nd defensively, 26th tackling defense, 27th pass rush, 23rd coverage team. All those are per PFF. Last week, Mason Rudolph in a quarter and a half, 21 for 26, 209 yards, 2 TDs. Cooper Rush.
There was 10.
Oh, I have balloons on my hand. Balloons.
Look at balloons. Oh, I love that.
Cooper Rush was able to move the ball against them. Winston will have success. He's due for some positive regression against this team. Bengals offensive line, bottom 10 in the league. Listen to these numbers. Ford, 60. These are all PFF. They're PFF grades. Ford, 68. Volson, 54. Correas, 25. Kappa, 70. And Mims, 65. Garrett's going to be able to generate pressure here. Winston getting 3.5 or more, 65% against the spread. Also, unfortunately, Nick Chubb is out. I love Nick Chubb, one of my favorite players ever. He has a broken foot. But the reality of the situation is he's not what he used to be. Those knees are finally starting to break down. He doesn't have the get up. I actually think this helps. This is going to be more touches for Ford. And this Browns team is due for some positive luck regression. They only allowed 14 points to the Chiefs.
Yep.
And lost.
The first play of the game, they gave the Chiefs a touchdown. So first play for the Browns, right? They muffed the punt and they gave it right back to them.
They're just due for some positive regression. I think this is it with how bad this defense is.
And then on the other side, the Bengals game, that Bengals-Titan game that you were just talking a little bit about, the Titans had more first downs, more total yards. They had the same yards per play, and they actually won the time of possession over the Bengals. The reason why they lost that game by 10, the Titans turned it over. This is not a misprint. 6 times. They had 6 turnovers in the game, along with 12 penalties for 110 yards.
That's another guy. Like, I don't know. I heard that Callahan's already starting to lose the locker room as a first-year coach, which is kind of like. But I just don't know. Like that's one of those teams. That's another team. Like I could see Rodgers being there. Like at first I thought it was going to be the Vikings, but I really think it's going to be the Titans. Because there's all these rumors he has a home there. I think we're going to see Aaron Rodgers play with the Titans next year.
Okay.
Final bet for Gino.
I think I might have stole this one from you because this is like a spot that you and I are almost always on. We've got Tomlin now as a dog of over a field goal. And then in this particular matchup, last week, Pittsburgh got beat up a little bit. I think they got kind of handled. So our perception of them now after the last few weeks, they're a little lower than we thought. Just a couple of weeks ago, they looked like maybe a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Wilson was playing a little bit better. So now they haven't played quite as well the last few weeks. And then this particular matchup, the Steelers have beat the Ravens 4 in a row. They've beat them 8 of the last 9 times. And the loss came by 2 points. Other losses that you look over the last couple of years, they lost in overtime by 3. They lost by 8. They lost again by 7, by 3, by 3. So all of their losses are close. They've actually been really successful against them. Lamar has some of his worst games against them. And just think about where these two teams were last week. I feel like if the Ravens weren't playing the Giants and played a more competitive team and the game was closer, and then Pittsburgh didn't look as bad, this is probably like 4.5, something like that. I feel like just off of last week, this was probably boosted up a point and a half because we saw Lamar have 5 touchdown passes. I think this is the third time in his career he's had more touchdown passes than incompletions, which, hey, that's incredible for a guy who was critiqued coming out of college as just a runner, a guy who couldn't make the throws. He has proved and he has shown a pinpoint accuracy, but this is just a bad value spot for the Ravens here. I like the Steelers. Anytime you get a team in this rivalry that's more than a field goal dog, you just have to take them.
Yep, just a blind bet on them. Just because the dog historically covers. Also, there is a play in. Now, look, I'm not taking away about the what they did in the second half, the Eagles, but the score was 13-20, 1st and 10, and the Eagles 26. And Najee Harris couldn't handle the pitch.
Yep.
And now look, I'm not saying that
they
was
won
anything, but they scored
way
there.
Different.
That kicks it down. They had a chance to tie it up. We got to remember there's these little fringe plays when we take a step back that actually kind of determine stuff. I'm not saying that would have changed stuff, but it would have definitely changed the game flow there in that game. My third and final one, going to the Seahawks here, plus 3.5. McDowell said in his interview today that Geno Smith is a go. Kind of a situational spot, fading the Vikings team here. They have the Packers on deck, and they're playing a short week after playing on Monday Night Football against the Bears. Cam Robinson looked bad last night. Him and Brandel are on the left side. I think the Seahawks are going to be able to get some pressure on Sam Darnold, who struggles when facing pressure. When you look at the Vikings, they struggle against wide receiver ones this season. This could be a bounce back for DK Metcalf. Now, I know everyone's going to say, what about JSN? JSN, he's having a sneaky good year.
Yep.
But why is he having a sneaky good year? People are bracket coveraging DK Metcalf. So that's opening stuff up. Now, look, the analogy I'm going to make, and I'm not comparing these guys apples to apples, but it's kind of like when AB and Juju Smith-Schuster were together with the Steelers. People were rolling coverage to Antonio Brown. This left a lot of stuff open for Juju, and this is exactly what's happening for Seattle. Now, what is that going to mean? I don't know. Are we going to see them just play what they normally do? Because Flores usually doesn't double guys. If they do, that's going to be huge for DK, who's finally going to eat. If they do double him for him, JSN will continue to shine. Who is Sam Darnold to be laying a field goal on the road in Seattle, laying over a field goal? Now, when we look at this, now this is one of those weird trends. Teams with a winning record over 500 that are coming off a loss in the month of December, the last 20 years, are 57% ATS. Just a little bit of bounce back spot. We're toward the end of the season. Teams with a winning record wanting to win. Seattle's offensive line has been better since Lucas came back. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. It looks like Walker is going to be coming back. Carbonate did have that great game against the Cardinals, came back to earth against the Packers. He is a 1B, a 2A type guy. They need Walker there. I think that's going to be huge because the Vikings, even though for the year grayed out well for the last 3 games, they're allowing 141.7 yards per game on the ground. When we look at the Vikings defensive splits, first half versus second half, they've taken a step backwards in the second half. I think it's because all these teams have adjusted to the Brian Flores defense. And last, there's the rule of 17. I don't know why this is. It's one of those weird trends. But when a team that is lost by 17 points or more is playing a team that has won by 17 points or more, last 20 years, 61% against the number. End of the day, I think the Seahawks will be able to create pressure against Darnold. I think it's a good spot to fade the Vikings with the game against the Packers on deck. That game's a lot. That game's a big game because now the Vikings are kind of the it team. Hey, they can win out. They could be the 1 seed. They control their destiny. I think this is the spot we can fade them. To me, this is field goal. Wins it one way or another. I'll take
absolutely.
Here.
Completely agree with you. This is a spot. Seattle's got everything. This is their whole season right now on the line. Seattle has to continue to win. They got to try to keep pace with the Rams and with Arizona, who both have winnable games. So I think you have to feel like you're going to get the best possible response from Seattle here. One thing, what can they do? Try to run the ball a little bit too. Try to slow down a little bit the Vikings, aggressive pass rush. I like that spot for you too. I like that one.
Seattle's just a tough place to play, and you have an indoor team like traveling out west. I wonder what the weather
across the country.
Yeah, out a short week. So I think this is a good spot. I need to
agree.
And the thing we need to understand when we just kind of take a step back. This was a team that was favored to be one of the worst teams in the league.
Yep.
That hasn't changed. You know what I mean? That's still
the personnel hasn't changed a whole lot. They kind of ebbed and flowed with their schedule. There were a couple of games that they flipped that could have gone either way, but I think they had like their over under was like 7.5, right? Something low.
Over under 7-7. They're one of the, they're less than 10-1.
Yep.
To be the last undefeated team. Looking at the weather, on Sunday, it's going to be 9-mile-per-hour winds and rainy. So that definitely helps with Walker coming back. Gino, yep. I'd like to thank you for coming on to talking a little NFL. Why don't you tell everyone what your podcast schedule is for this week, my friend?
Yeah, we'll have one coming out probably late Wednesday. I'm going to talk tomorrow with you. We're going to preview all of NFL Week 16. I'm going to go over Gulfstream Park. They have a big Saturday with 4 graded stakes races, so I'm going to look at all of those with my buddy Barry Spears. I'll also have some fairgrounds, and then it won't be on the podcast because that'll come out early, but Santa Anita opening day is the day after Christmas. So those races, the entries will come out on Thursday. I'll be doing a lot of stuff for that. I'll have some previews. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, That's What G Said podcast on YouTube, or the podcast That's What G Said. You could also give me a follow over on Blue Sky. It's me, Gino B. Eric, buddy, man, it's been a blast the last few years talking with you all the time, working with you. Anytime you need me over here, just let me know.
Always a pleasure having you on. Appreciate you. Looking forward to talking. Giving a game by game preview. Plus, we'll be live this Sunday,
11 a.m. Eastern time.
11 a.m. Eastern time. So looking forward to that. And those next week. Next week it's Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is my mom's birthday. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't know if I'm going to record it Monday.
You got to get mom as the guest with you there.
My mom is the guest. I don't know how I'm going to play that out. If I'm going to come out during, I don't know. I'll figure something out. I'll make sure I post that. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and best of luck in your bets. And we'll talk to everyone next week.
Good luck, everyone.